a teenage film snob, baby. I was a teenage film snob, baby.
Three small-town girls on the verge of rock and roll superstardom. A cute boy next door who doesn't seem to notice you. The biggest boy band in the world dies mysteriously in a plane crash. International conspiracies. The media weaponizing music against teenagers. Product placement. More international conspiracies. The government. And one kick-ass soundtrack. Welcome to I Was a Teenage Film Snob. I'm James Chalmers, and this is why you should watch Josie and the Pussycats. Alright gang, welcome to a brand new series I'm doing. I teased it in the last episode, if everything worked out the way it should be. I am diving into films that I think are underrated, misunderstood, or just should be watched more. We're going to focus on the ones that have been, clouded with negativity first, and once we get through those, then I'll go into some more underwatched classics that I think people should check out. And today we are, of course, talking about Josie and the Pussycats. So let's dive straight in. This is a childhood film of mine. I loved this as a kid. I was a fan of Josie before she was in the movie. We'll talk about that in a moment. This flick came out in 2001, directed by the team Harry Elfont and Deborah Kaplan, who previously directed the 90s teen comedy Can't Hardly Wait. The writing team was also Harry Elfont and Deborah Kaplan, who wrote, as I mentioned, Can't Hardly Wait. They also wrote a very Brady sequel, The Flintstones and Viva Rock Vegas, Surviving Christmas, and Maid of Honor. If you look at that filmography, definitely a divisive one there, but we're not here to divide, we're here to unite. The film, of course, is also based on characters created by Richard Goldwater, John L. Goldwater, and Dan DeCarlo, who created Josie back in the 60s. The film was distributed by Universal Studios on a budget of $39 million. That's $39 million in the year 2001, which would be a much bigger budget these days. But for 2001, very low budget for a mainstream studio film. To put that in comparison, I think The Dark Knight was around $80 million, maybe more, maybe 100. Superhero films tended to go north of $100 million back in the day, even then. Whereas these kind of mid-range comedies tend to be anywhere from $30 to $50 million. So $39 million, very reasonable budget for a film of this caliber. The box office takings overall worldwide were $14.8 million, so it made less than half its money back, and it was considered a flop. Again, we don't really care about flops here. We don't care about how much money they make. We care about the films themselves. But this probably is one of the reasons why it has been forgotten. The film cast some incredible talents. Rachel Lee Cook, Rosario Dawson, Tara Reid, Alan Cumming, and Parker Posey. And it has a score of 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb. And Rotten Tomatoes, it's one of the few times the audience and critics seem to be in agreement, with the critics giving it a 54%, making it rotten, and a 53% from the audience also making it rotten. As I've talked about in the podcast before, I don't really believe in the way critics mark these films. I don't believe in scoring films. I have to give a score on Letterboxd when I do that, but I don't really believe in scoring films. It's not about what you give it out of 10 or 100 or out of 5. It's about how you connect with the material, and this is a flick that I connected with. So before we talk about the movie itself, let's dive into Josie's humble origins. Josie started out as a comic book character, debuting in Archie Comics back in 1963. Originally published simply as Josie, and then later as She's Josie, our rock and roll queen in Feline Fatigues was created by Dan DeCarlo in an effort to get more work developing comic strips. He was a bit of a freelancer at the time. He'd done a couple of comics, but he wanted to be a mainstay, and he kind of cracked it big with Josie. The original band featured the trio of Josie, our vocalist and lead guitarist, Melody, the ditzy but good-hearted drummer, and a girl named Pepper, who was Josie's best friend and dark hair. If that name is unfamiliar to you, it's because Pepper is not around anymore. This lineup stayed true until 1969, issue 45 of Josie and the Pussycats, at which point Pepper was replaced by Valerie as the band's bassist and backup vocalist, the member that most audiences are familiar with. I was looking into it, and it doesn't seem to be clear reasons to why Pepper was replaced. Pepper was a Caucasian girl with short black hair. Valerie, as we know, is an African-American girl, so it may have been to provide some variety. It may have been to provide some representation, which during the 60s and 70s was a big deal. Obviously representation is a big deal now, but you did start to see little hints of representation, in comic books in particular in the 60s and 70s. And that might have been why they did it. Now, the comic book ran until 1982, but Josie and her friends have made numerous appearances in Archie Comics since. Even had a new series launched in 2017 following the release of the CW series Riverdale. If you haven't seen Riverdale, it's a dark, angsty teen drama. It's an interpretation of Archie and Friends. And Josie and the Pussycats do make an appearance in the TV show, albeit far different from the version we're going to talk about today. During the height of Pussycat Fever, Josie starred in not one but two animated series produced by Hanna-Barbera. If that name sounds familiar to you, Hanna-Barbera produced The Flintstones, The Jetsons, Yogi Bear, Scooby-Doo, Wacky Races, and so many more. I grew up on the cartoon work of Hanna-Barbera. It's a huge part of my childhood. It was a direct competitor with Disney. The animation was always deemed a little bit cheaper. They would recycle backgrounds a lot. But it's had some really wonderful characters. If you're not familiar with the work of Hanna-Barbera, just jump on YouTube for like an hour and just binge all of their wonderful content. There's so much great stuff out there. Now, the first animated series of Josie and the Pussycats was simply called Josie and the Pussycats, and it first aired from 1970 through to 1972. And like the Hanna-Barbera series Scooby-Doo, it followed a group of teens getting caught up into weird events and solving mysteries. Even though Josie and the Pussycats wasn't initially really a mystery comic, it was more kind of this kind of teen drama around this girl band. They wanted to give them something to do, I suppose, in the series, and they had them solving mysteries. And I remember that one quite vividly. Josie and the Pussycats was a huge part of my childhood. In 1972, the cartoon was reconceptualized as Josie and the Pussycats in outer space. This is a big one as well. I remember this one from being a kid. Tonally, it was very similar to the original animated series. However, now instead of solving mysteries on Earth, the band were often kidnapped by aliens and found themselves escaping odd planets every episode. I loved this cartoon. It's crazy. It's so wacky. And all of these cartoons of this era, if it had like a group of teens, there was always a kind of musical number where they were being chased by a villain like through a series of doors, like a corridor with like 20 doors, while it cut to like images or kind of shots of the band playing their instruments. And Scooby-Doo did this, and definitely Josie and the Pussycats did it. And Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space ran from 1972 to 1973. Now, fast forward to 2001, the decade of sequels, remakes, and reboots, and Universal Studios took it upon themselves to bring Josie and the Pussycats to the modern world, trading in 70s-style pop music for late 90s to 2000s pop punk. Josie and her friends were ready for the new millennium. This is a great flick. I love Josie and the Pussycats. The movie follows Josie, Melody, and Valerie, a small band from a small town, hell-bent on making it big in the music scene. When global pop sensation du jour suddenly die in a mysterious plane crash, Josie and her friends find themselves inexplicably thrust into the spotlight and are immediately the biggest band in the world. However, it doesn't take long for the band to grow suspicious of their new manager Wyatt, played by Alan Cumming, or the head of the label Fiona, played by Parker Posey. Determined to get to the bottom of it, the girls start to investigate the pair in an adventure that will force them to decide between fame and fortune or friendship. This flick is ahead of its time. It's so fun and silly. You'll see people draw comparisons between this movie and Spice World, which I do think is a fair comparison. Spice World also has an element of mystery. It's also very tongue-in-cheek. And unlike Josie and the Pussycats, is based on a real band, but obviously highly fictionalized. It's interesting that they drew, it seems, more comparison to the animated series for Josie and the Pussycats than the initial comic books. Because yes, it is about a girl band trying to make it big, but focusing a lot more on the mystery angle. But I think it really works for the film. Now, the complaints about this film is that the plot is silly and nonsensical, which I will agree, but that's part of its charm. I think people who criticize the film for being silly have missed the point of the film. It's meant to be a silly film. It's meant to be nonsensical. I mean, there's definitely some real commentary there. A lot of bands are chewed up and spat out by the machine that is the music industry. That's a tale as old as time. It does happen. And maybe not in a conspiracy where the label has, forced one of their popular acts into a plane crash. Like, maybe that's not real, but the way they use the band for commercial success and to promote products is very close to home. It was criticized for its use of product placement, particularly given that it was talking about product placement and kind of criticizing it. I think that the audiences misunderstood that. They said the film was hypocritical, but really it was doing it in the same way that Wayne's World did it 10 years earlier or 15 years earlier when they were doing product placement as well. Yes, it's very on the nose, but it's making a commentary. The best way to make a commentary is to satirize or parody it, which is exactly what they're doing. And Roger Ebert, the famous movie critic, had this to say about the film. He said that Josie and the Pussycats are not dumber than the Spice Girls. They're as dumb as the Spice Girls, and that is dumb enough. It's a very grumpy old white man talking there about young women. A critique that we're going to come back to again and again in this series is that people don't like films because they're dumb. I talked about Super Mario Galaxy movie a few weeks back, and people talked about the plot being dumb. There's nothing wrong with dumb. Dumb is fun. Everyone kind of looks at film down their nose in a very snooty way that it needs to tell these compelling kind of stories of the human condition. They need to be serious and grounded and heartbreaking and thought-provoking. But the reason we go to the movies more often than not is to disconnect, to switch off. And the best way to do that is to watch something dumb. I have a whole list of movies we're going to go through in this series, and just about every single one of them is dumb. But that's the point. Dumb is okay. So those were the complaints about the film. Now, there are some theories as to why the film didn't quite work, because on paper it should. It's based on a successful comic book series and cartoon, and granted it was 30 years after the cartoon, so modern audiences might not have been ready for it. If anything, parents might have been familiar with it. I was lucky. I got to watch a lot of kind of cartoons on cable as a kid, so I was very familiar with Josie and the Pussycats. But I think I was probably in the minority when it comes to my friends at school. Like, I think when that film came out, most of my friends hadn't heard of Josie and the Pussycats. So that's one thing that went wrong, is they waited way too long to make this movie. The movie is definitely ahead of its time. This kind of satire and parody is something the world wasn't quite ready for. It was parodying what was happening right in the moment, and we weren't an instant reaction generation in the 2000s. You know, right now in 2026, everyone's got a smartphone, everyone's connected to the internet. People are parodying and satirizing things as they happen. Weird Al Yankovic came out on the release of his last album, Mandatory Fun, which was out in 2013 or 2014, and basically said that he doesn't know if he'll do another album. If he wants to keep up with the times, he needs to make his tracks as the events are happening, because the world doesn't have that attention anymore. You know, if you look at the way memes work, if you look at the way shows like SNL work, like, they are on top of it. As soon as something happens, they're making fun of it, because if you wait a week, you've missed it, you're too late. But when we were kids, when I was a kid, it was a lot slower. So it was parodying what was happening right now, but people weren't ready for it. They're like, this is far too critical. Why are you criticizing something that's working? Whereas now, like, this film would be too slow coming out. It'd be 2 years too late. So it was too advanced for its time, and it's too late now. So it needed to be made maybe in the 2010s in terms of what it was trying to achieve. Another thing that went wrong is the film was poorly marketed. It was marketed as the next Spice World movie, as a musical for kids, but it's not that at all. This is not a kids' film. Even though it's based on a kids' comic book and a kids' cartoon, the approach they've taken with it, the level of satire and parody, some of the more mature jokes they're making, it's definitely for an older audience. But the problem is it doesn't quite know who its audience is, because it does make those more mature jokes that are going to go over children's heads. But then it's also making very silly jokes, especially in the third act with the reveal of Wyatt and Fiona, of who they truly are. Very juvenile joke, which I'm here for. I dig it. But if you kind of came in for a more mature parody, then it kind of pulls out at the end. I remember when I watched this with my wife during the pandemic. She'd never seen it before. I was so excited to show it to her. And she didn't like it at all. But I think the part that really broke her was the reveal of the villains at the very end, because it went from being silly to flat out dumb. Which, again, I'm here for it, but not everyone is. So we've talked about the complaints, we've talked about its history, we've talked about what went wrong. So why should you watch it? If it's such a terrible film, if we've made all these mistakes, why should you watch it? Well, first of all, the cast. Going through our cast, we've got Alan Cumming, who was coming off Spice World at the time, and he's absolutely fantastic. He plays villain so well. A really good villain. We had Parker Posey, who'd been coming off the Christopher Guest film, so she had done, at this point, Waiting for Guffman. I think she'd done Best in Show as well, at this point as well. And she's an incredible improv performer, wonderful ad-libber. I believe it was her connection to Eugene Levy, which got him the cameo in the film. And his moment in the film was wonderful. He's very, very funny. But she's great as well, because she's very villainous, but she's also very infantile in the way she kind of carries herself. And her motivations are really good. Like, she's got these great motivation as a villain. She grew up unpopular without friends, so now she wants everyone to love her. I mean, I said, we weren't going to talk about the human condition, but what's more human than wanting to be loved? Like, that's all it is. Rosario Dawson was coming off Kids, the Larry Clark film, one of the darkest films ever made. She hadn't done Death Proof yet. She hadn't done Sin City. She hadn't done Clerks 2. Rosario Dawson was on the cusp of becoming a superstar, and now she is. She's in Star Wars and everything. But this time she was still kind of breaking, and she's fantastic. She plays the most grounded of the three. She's the level head of the group. She's the one who starts to realize that maybe not everything is as it seems. Tara Reid coming off American Pie, and I believe the reason why some of the jokes don't quite land. She didn't have to do this film. She was definitely making her way as kind of a teen sex comedy star. She was in American Pie and Road Trip. She was doing all these raunchy comedies, and she could have kept going in that direction. And instead, she made this film. But I think it's some of the jokes that she was given. They probably fed her these jokes, knowing her status as a kind of this raunchy kind of character actor, that maybe divided viewers because they weren't for kids. And of course, the cast lead, America's Girl Next Door, Rachel Lee Cook, who was coming off She's All That. She plays Josie. And is just incredible in this movie. It's so easy to dismiss the performance, but you have to remember, I believe she was almost 30 at the time, and she's playing ostensibly a teenager, or a girl in her very early 20s at the latest. I think she's meant to be a teenager, and you buy it. You buy the insecurity of, the boy not giving her the attention she wants. You buy the insecurity in herself as a performer. You buy the guilt she feels when she pushes her friends away. This is an incredible scene where she's brainwashed and she's teasing Melody, played by, not Melody, Valerie, sorry. I might get my characters confused. Valerie, played by Rosario Dawson. She's mocking her, and it's so villainous and cruel. But there's this, because she's America's sweetheart, because she's so adorable, you are smiling during the performance. You kind of, this is not who Josie's supposed to be, and you know that Josie is better than this, and she's going to overcome it. So the cast and the performances are 100% a reason you should watch this, even if you don't care for the story. I've talked about this plenty of times on the podcast. I've watched so many films that, the plot might not be what I was into, but in fact, I thought it was Batman vs. Superman. The first time I watched Batman vs. Superman, which is a movie I love now, but the first time I watched it, I hated it. But even though I hated it, I walked away saying, you know what? Affleck was great as Batman. Cavill was great as Superman. I really dug Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. We'll talk about that later. I'm sure Batman v Superman is going to come up at some point on this show. But the performances are wonderful and endearing and silly and just everything you want. Another reason you should watch this film is for the jokes. They're very tongue-in-cheek. They're very quick-witted. The jokes are very fast, and that's one of the reasons why it's not really for children. Like the opening scene of this film is this boy band du jour performing a song called Backdoor Lover, which is making fun of the fact that in the 90s, a lot of people thought that boy bands had to be gay. Now, I'm not saying that it's the right joke to make. I'm not saying it's appropriate joke for 2026, but that is very 90s, 2000s humor. And to open your PG film with a song called Backdoor Lover, based on a comic book and a cartoon for kids, like that lets you know exactly what kind of movie you're in for. And it's funny, man. It cracks me up. But if there is one reason you should watch this movie, and one reason alone, it is for the music. The soundtrack is incredible. Pretend to Be Nice, Three Small Words. Obviously the Josie and the Pussycat theme. It's so good. Now, it's not Rachel Lee Cook performing the songs. It's actually Kay Hanley of the band Letters to Cleo, who is the voice of Josie when she's singing. But it is rocking, man. It's such a great like pop punk album. I'll put a link to the album in the show notes. If you haven't listened to it, you can go to Spotify and check it out. Three Small Words should just like tell you everything you need to know. It's such a great song, and it's the opening track the girls play in the credits of the film as well. And then, yeah, Pretend to Be Nice, I put in my YouTube video when I was talking about Josie and the Pussycats earlier this year. So there are a lot of reasons people can tell you not to watch this film. They're going to tell you it sucks. They're going to tell you it's not funny. It's too silly. They're going to tell you it's dumb. Those aren't reasons to not watch a film for me. A movie being dumb or silly or having a low score online is not a reason to avoid a film. If anything, it's a reason to check it out. You're telling me this film is dumb? Great. Let me see how dumb this movie is. You're telling me this film has a low score? Well, now I need to know why. Why are people ranking it so low? The reasons you should watch it, and that's what we're talking about in this podcast, are the cast and performances. Rachel Lee Cook is everything 90s and just the greatest. But the supporting cast are wonderful as well. Tara Reid, Rosario Dawson, Alan Cumming, and Parker Posey. Every time any one of those people are on screen, which is every scene of the film, you're digging what they're doing. And of course, the music. Great soundtrack. Again, I'll put the link in the show notes. So that is it. That is why you should watch Josie and the Pussycats. These are not going to be long episodes. We'll give you a little bit of history. We'll talk about why people don't like it, and then we'll tell you why you should check it out. I love this film. I was so excited when I saw the trailer in theaters announcing a Josie and the Pussycats movie. I didn't get to see it in theaters, but the first day it was out on DVD, I went to my video store and I rented it, and I loved it immediately. It's so fun. It's so rock and roll. It's a great like tween film. Like my daughter is too young for it now, but when she's like 9 or 10, she'll be the right age for it. It's so fun and really funny and charming and sweet, and has a good message about friendship, about believing in yourself and loving yourself and being worthy of love. Like these are all very human things in a silly old movie called Josie and the Pussycats. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more reasons you should watch movies. But watch heaps, and I'll see you soon.